Hey people. I'm so excited to be here with one of my artists who also, her book that just came out. Very excited. Very
Hi.
excited. Hello, people. Hey, Kim. Hey, Kim is a spectacular agent. She has commissioned, I would easily say hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs with my agency, but she's also an amazing illustrator, and she was an illustrator for children's books before she came on with Lilla Rogers Studio with my agency. I'm very excited because we're going to talk about her new book that just came out called My Mummy is a Unicorn, but that's Australian English, mummy for mommy. It's not a
No,
book about mummies. It's published through Scholastic Australia, and I'm really looking forward to having her share about her process with all
thank
of
you.
you.
Hi,
Welcome,
everyone.
Kim. It's so good to see people, Rocio, and
Mhm.
some new names. Some new names. So, first of all, how did you get the gig? Tell me how you
Well,
got this
I,
wonderful
yeah.
gig. Oh, why don't you hold it up? Hold it up. Hold it up. Okay. And flip
Sure.
through a
And
few
the front,
pages
I
for
don't know
us,
if you
will
can
you?
see, but the front is like sparkly and embossed. It's really cool.
Oh,
Um, okay.
that's
It's hard to
so
flip
good.
through in this format, but I'll do my best.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's a great kid. It's really important to have a great kid that you can draw in poses like here with expressions to tell your story.
So,
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. Scenes. Oh, that's a gorgeous scene. And you show scenes in your work, which is probably one of the
yeah.
ways
And
you got the
and the
book.
fun thing about this book is that so it's the child is imagining their mother as all these
Mm.
different sort of magical creatures, and because of all the incredible things that mothers do every day for their children. So there's a lot of magical realism in this book, which was so fun. So I got to draw the mother as a mermaid and as a dragon and as a robot and superhero and all these things. And so the way I got the gig was that they saw, so I'd worked with Scholastic Australia before. So they were on my like newsletter list, and I sent
Mhm.
out in one of my newsletters this image of this child, actually looked fairly similar to this child here, riding a whale, but
Oh,
underwater, obviously. So there's a bit of magical realism going on. And and they saw that and they thought, oh, you know, she'll be good for this story that they had waiting in the wings. So they offered me the gig, and I was very excited to do it. And it was so fun to get to illustrate all these different creatures and also come up with all these different fantastical environments too. The one that I just showed,
mm.
the dragon, this is probably one of my favorite spreads from the book. And I love doing this one just because,
Yeah,
first of
yeah.
all, it's a dragon, but also this environment I got to, you know, just completely make up out of my head. So I came up with the idea of this sort of, you know, treehouse town. And in the beginning, it was
Uh,
actually a bit more realistic, like the temples were sort of more like a Thai temple or something like that. And they said, no, it looks too real. Can you make it a bit more fantastical? So they pushed me on this one, which was really fun.
oh,
So I brought in some sort of Dr. Seuss influences and was able to make it a bit more crazy. So the team at Scholastic was really fun to work with on this.
that's wonderful. And so, did you use any kind of reference at all, photo
For that,
reference
so this was,
for any?
I sort of cheated a little bit on this one. So this was actually based on an illustration I had done before with a different different character. It was with a child on the back of a bird, and sort of looking down towards this city. So I had already done a bit of the research, and was able to use a composition I had already come up with. It's very difficult to find reference for looking down on a town, so I really just had to sort of come up with it myself. If I was better at 3D modeling, I would have done like a 3D model of it. I've seen some illustrators do that, so then they can like turn it around and see what it looks like from different angles. But I just had to sort of work it out.
Do you mean
Yeah,
digitally
I mean,
3D
you
modeling,
could do
or
it with
build
clay
a little,
too, I suppose.
or
But,
you could,
yeah, I've seen
yeah.
a lot of, well, not a lot, but I've seen illustrators who will make a 3D environment in 3D software, and that way they can sort of put the camera wherever they want and affect different lighting and that sort of thing. So it's a really great way to get reference.
That. Love that. You know, you could go like to a train hobby shop where they have all the miniatures. Playtime here in Arlington, like the little houses and trees and roads and things. You could make something like that, I guess. That's kind of fun. I think anything that makes you excited or inspired to make your project or your book or whatever, that's awesome. So how long did they give you to do this 32-page book?
It's a 24-page book.
10 spreads?
It's for quite young
12
kids.
spreads.
So I had about 6 months to begin with, but then the timeline actually got a bit compressed, just because they ended up needing more time for the printing and shipping, and you know how things are these days with supply chain issues and transportation. I think everything sort of takes more time than people expected to, still now, even after the pandemic is basically over. So sort of after I had submitted my first round of sketches, they said, actually, we need to speed up the timeline. So in the end, I think I had 4.5 months. But what happened, which was really great, and this is particular to how the team at Scholastic works. I haven't worked with other publishers who do this, but I really like it. They asked me to submit thumbnail sketches first of all the spreads, so that they could approve those first. And that's really great, because you get to know, if you're, heading down the right track, and you don't spend a lot of time doing a really detailed rough when it's something that they would have, they didn't like in the first place. I got the thumbnails approved, and they said, because my thumbnails were so detailed, once they compressed the timeline, like, actually, you know what, don't worry about roughs, just go straight to final art. I was like, oh wow. That was dreamy.
That's dreamy. Did they have any changes, or wanted you to emphasize something more, or they really liked this and wanted more of it? Like, what kinds of editing,
well,
art
like
directing
I said,
did they
really
provide?
pushed me, which was great. They pushed me to make it more fantastical. They didn't want it necessarily, especially in some of the more fantastical spreads, like the dragon and that sort of thing. They didn't want it to look like something you would find somewhere on Earth. There were other spreads, where it was like a ballerina or an actual person, where it did need to be a bit more realistic. But they really pushed me and really got my imagination going, and that was wonderful. Yeah.
Good. So did you sit around and daydream at times to kind of come up with cool imaginative stuff as part of your job? And then I have another question for you.
It was amazing. There's this one spread, I did a lot of research, a lot of visual research for a lot of these. And one of the spreads I did was this robot, and I really wanted it to be this like cyberpunk sort of underground workshop. So I did a lot of research into, what that would look like. A lot of these just a lot of the gadgets and stuff in the back, and looked at a lot of visual reference for color palettes and that sort of thing. So I really got to, and because every spread is it's a completely different environment from spread to spread. So I got to do that for every illustration basically. So it's really, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to see your sketches in a moment and how you developed your character. But first, I want to ask you, what medium do you work in? Do you work digitally,
So I
traditionally?
have developed this real hybrid workflow. I used to work completely traditionally, all watercolors, but now I do this thing where I do a lot of patterns and textures traditionally, and then I scan those in and sort of assemble them all digitally in Photoshop. So for instance, I'll create
And I
like
know,
a watercolor texture, and I'll let me see if I can find a good example. I mean, even just the these end papers I can show you. So you can see there's like this watercolor texture in the background. So that was made, you know, by me painting watercolors. And then a lot of these patterns are done with hand carved stamps, which I really love doing. So I actually have the one that I used to make one of the stamps in the end papers. So they start out as these big like rubber blocks, which I really like, and then I use these tools to like carve them out and stuff.
Do you like how she has all her things to show us?
I've got,
well
it's
done.
like a cooking show.
Well
I've got all my ingredients.
Right. That's true. Cooking. So,
Yeah.
and those are those soft rubbery things that cut almost
it's
like
much
butter.
easier to carve than like a lino block. Lino is quite hard, and I did try that initially, but it's quite difficult on my wrist. So I found these, which I really love. They're Speedball. I just really love this company and the feel. It's really easy to carve, but not too easy so that you like slip with the tool. So yeah, so I carved, for instance, for this one, you know, I carved a unicorn, a mermaid, and a dragon, and a few stars. And then I bring them all into Photoshop, and I change the colors around and get them to sit nicely together. So
TM6543 asks, what's it called? What's the name of the?
Yeah, I'll show it to you.
It's Speedball.
Speedball carving block, Speedy Cut.
Something?
And I personally like this one that's this color. They have other ones that are pink that are a bit, I just don't like the feel as much. And then you can see also I use the same pattern in this blanket, so I can use it and like cut it out to a mask in Photoshop. So I use a lot of patterning in my work as well, and mostly with the stamps.
Kokib Studio asks, is your final work CMYK? And by the way, anybody who has questions, please type them in and I'll try to read them
So
off.
I always, whenever I'm working in Photoshop, I work in RGB just because that has a wider range of color. So you don't want to sort of limit yourself when you're working. But then when you send it to be printed, it needs to be in CMYK. Some publishers like you to do the change yourself, and some publishers will do that for you. With Scholastic, they did it for me, which I actually prefer because they will have particular profiles that they're working with for their printer, so they know how it's going to work best with their printer. But yeah, the final files always need to be CMYK.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay, so a lot of people want to be illustrators or take my courses over at Make Art That Sells, and they're like, yeah, but I have a full-time job. Okay, you're a full-time agent at a hotshot agency.
Yeah.
How do you do both?
Look, I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of work. I don't watch TV really, unless I'm watching something while I'm working. So basically, I have my job at the agency during the day, and then I do all the family stuff, you know, the after school and dinner and get my son to bed. And then when my son's in bed, that's like my time to do my thing. So I work pretty much, you know, every night, every weeknight at least. I try to have weekends off, but I work pretty much
Good.
every night, and I'll work until I'm too tired to work anymore, and then I'll crash in bed and wake up and do it all over again. So it's definitely a commitment, you know, and
Mhm.
yeah,
Right, right. But you
I love it.
love it. You love it. And also, knowing you as I do, you hit the ground running. So you probably have a plan while it's daytime, while you're agenting and assigning jobs to other artists. Then you probably know, okay, when I get to work at such and such time this evening, I'm going to
Right,
do the background of that
right.
scene and that character,
Yes,
blah, blah. Is that
absolutely.
true?
No,
You don't
I
waste
always have a plan,
time.
especially when I'm working on a book. I remember with this book, I had also just launched this Instagram challenge with a couple of illustrator friends, and so we were doing a lot of the promo for
Mm,
that. And I literally had in my calendar, okay, this week work on this spread for the book. This week work on this for the Instagram challenge. This week, you know, like I had it all laid out because
wonderful.
otherwise I would have just gotten too overwhelmed and confused, and you know, I would sit down at my desk and I wouldn't know what I should be working on. So I planned it all out,
That's
and
right.
you know, I made sure I stuck to that as much as possible. My family were very good at allowing me, you know, weekend time to to work on it as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
you take the time where you can get it.
Right. And most people have breaks in
Right.
between books anyway, so you have a little downtime that way. Um, my mother, who's 99, always said, even when I was little, she said, "You want something done, ask a busy person." Have you all heard that one? Yeah, that's Kim. And having a full-time job is actually incredibly useful in a way because you're organized typically, you know how to achieve, get things done. So it's
Yeah, and
not a
I
bad
think
thing
also
necessarily.
for
I'm sure
me,
people
becoming
may,
a parent really made me learn how to use my time properly. I can remember, you know, my son's 10 now, he's at school all day, but you know, I remember when he was
Mhm.
little and I would, you know, tear my hair out trying to get him down for a nap. And then I knew I had, you know, half an hour or whatever it was. And I had been thinking all morning about, okay, when I get that half an hour, this is what I'm going to do. And I would sit down, you know, really enjoy that
Mhm.
half an hour time that was for
Yeah.
me. And I think, you know, I think for a lot of artists or maybe even non-artists, the way they think about art sometimes is, oh, you have to wait for inspiration, and you know, I can't sit down and create until, you know, that bolt of lightning hits me. But really, no, it's a lot more functional than that. And I've really learned how to
Right.
compartmentalize my time, and even if I just have half an hour, okay, I'm going to
Mhm.
use that half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved when I was younger the financial incentive when I was an illustrator. Like, crap, I've rent coming. I better,
Yeah,
get my
get
promotion
stuff.
going or something. So sometimes those things can be useful as well. Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. Will you show us some of your process pages, how you developed the character when you do a picture book? You have to be, one of the reasons why you're hired is you prove that you can do an illustration
Right.
of the same character throughout in different poses, different expressions. So
Yeah,
I know you did
yeah.
that. Can
So
you
for
show us some
this
of
book,
those?
they wanted a child who was non-gender specific. So I was really trying to create a
Mhm.
character, you know, with those qualities, and I wanted them to be sort of Islander, maybe, you know, mixed race anyway, so that you couldn't tell necessarily where they were from. So I started with, you know, a few different facial features, and then also
So
tried a
good.
few different body type. And
Body
you know, a big part of this
love.
was trying to hit the right age range. So they wanted this character to be around 5. So it's getting the proportions of the head to the body, and also just making an interesting character. So good, you know, good character design is usually like, you know, a big body and a small head, or vice versa. So I was just sort of playing around with all
Mm-hmm.
that. And same thing for the mom. So the mom, at first, this was my initial sketch for the mom. I wanted her to be super cool, like lots of tattoos and stuff like that, but they didn't go for it. They thought she looked too much like a big sister. So I had to so I had
Yeah.
to tone her down and make her a bit softer. But so in the beginning, I do a lot of sketches. I work on pencil and paper in the beginning, and then I'll scan those in, make any changes, send those off for roughs, and then then like I was saying, for finals, it's sort of a hybrid way of working.
So great. Coco Studio asks,
No,
are
so
these your
these are just like
thumbnails?
initial sketches that I did, sort of for really just for me. Like I didn't show these to the publisher.
Mm.
These are for me to figure
Oh,
things out, to figure out what the facial features would be and what the body shape would be. So then I unfortunately don't have it in this sketchbook, but I worked up like a turnaround. So that's when you draw a character in a few different positions, usually front, side, and maybe 3/4, to show what the character looks like. And I would submit those just as a sketch at first, and then they had a few changes to the character. So then I made those changes, and then I submitted a color turnaround. And then once that was approved, then I knew, okay, now I can go forward and, you know, start the book, basically knowing who my character was.
mm, that's fabulous. Coco Studio is our class question asker. She asks also, what is your workflow process to organize your projects? And before you answer that, remind me how many books picture books you've illustrated.
Over a dozen now. I'm not sure exactly the count, but
Amazing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Okay, so you've really figured out your process. Will you briefly
On my
touch on that?
process of illustrating or organizing.
Oh, how you
Yeah, I
stay
mean, so
organized, maybe
it's a
like
bit
different
different for me now,
folders.
because when I first started my illustration career, I was doing sort of 3/4 time illustration, and 1/4 I had a part-time job where I was doing graphic design. So I had a lot more projects on at the same time. Whereas now I work full-time at the studio, so I don't have quite as much time. So I really only have one book project on at a time. I can't handle more than that. So one book project and a full-time job, that's sort of that's sort of the limit for me. So
Pretty
I don't
amazing.
have multiple projects that I have to organize at a time. When I was doing that, then
Mhm.
yes, I had folders that had I would have like the name of the project and the main due date on it, and I would had a filing, one of those filing folder, just a metal rack sort of thing that I folder.
Like an
An
actual
actual real
paper
life physical
thingy.
thing that I would print stuff out, notes from the editor or art director that I knew I would need to refer to often, notes maybe on my roughs or something like that. So I didn't have to keep going looking for an email all the time. And I like to make annotations as well. So I would
Mm.
keep that in an actual folder. And then whatever thing I was working on at that time, I would move it to the front of my little rack. And then I also, it's funny, I've never actually used a paper calendar, as in like a physical calendar, but I
Yeah. Oh.
always use like a Google Cal or iCal calendar to keep all my deadlines straight. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Now, why paper versus Google
Yeah, I'm not
Calendar or
sure. I
iCal?
think maybe just because it's easier to move things around, because, things do often change. So, on the paper calendar, I would just end up, crossing things out and writing things back in, and then it would just look like a big mess. Whereas on the Google Calendar, I can, or actually I use iCal, I can color code things. You can have things in different calendars, so you can turn them on and off. So it's like I can just look at my deadlines, or I can, you know, just look at the promo stuff I need to be doing, or whatever it is. I have them in all different calendars. So that, I find that works really well.
I love that too. And then you can
Yep.
see the calendar where I put in things for you to do with me, our little projects together for the agency. That's pretty cool. So what tips do you have for illustrators, both as an agent and as an illustrator? Maybe we'll start with as an illustrator. If you have any left, I mean, you've given so many good ones. Well, let's tie it in with being an agent too. How can people get work? What do they need to show? What do you look for when I take on artists from my courses at this point, because I see how they produce work. They do my assignments. It's more intimate than just a random email, although we do once in a while do it that way. But then I will bring the artist I'm crazy about to the team, to Kim and Susan and so forth, and say, what do you think? What do you look for in those meetings?
For me, the number one thing, and everyone's going to hate me saying this because it's a really difficult thing, is a unique voice, which can be hard to cultivate, and basically just takes a lot of time to cultivate, to figure out what, you know, what is your style, right? It's sort of the big million-dollar question is, how do you find your style? And for me, that's the biggest thing I look for, is a unique style, something where I can look at this person's work and know just right away, oh yeah, that's so-and-so because of this and that. And you know, it just has to be a voice and a style that captivates me. Of course, you know, there's all sorts of things you need to have in your portfolio if it's for children's book illustration in particular. Some of the things you were talking about, like, you know, drawing a character consistently, showing poses, showing emotions, so showing you could do a scene with lots of people is a good thing too. So, you know, there's a whole checklist of stuff for your portfolio, but yeah, number one thing for me would be a unique style.
Yeah, I want to chime in on that too. I want to see that it looks like the person wasn't trying to make a portfolio to get work, you know, and follow checklists, but what they were really excited about making and passionate, and they had a good time creating the environment or the details on the character. I like specificity on the character. For example, what are they wearing? What's their hair like? Is it like people you might see in real life walking down the street or at a cafe or in a nursery school or something? Like specificity is so interesting to me. Based on your interests, do you love drawing nature? So it's not just a maple tree, but maybe it's an interesting kind of weeping cherry in spring and birch with the peeling bark, or and it's not just a typical fern with a few strokes, but maybe it's a wider leaf fern. You get the picture. Like doing your research, being passionate about what you want to draw, using a color palette that's fresh, that's interesting, that's just yummy and delicious, that's not just primaries and secondaries, that's curated. It's about really being a curator and drawing what you select and pick out.
And I
That's
think
what I
that's
look
why
for.
personal work is so important, whether you're an aspiring artist trying to get your first book deal, or whether you've had, you know, book deals up the wazoo for the last 10 years. You know, personal work is where those choices really come out and where your style really shines. And once you put out that kind of work, that's what you really want to do, then those are the kind of things that'll start coming back. For instance, as I explained earlier, I got this book through a personal piece that I did that I loved. I loved creating. I loved the concept of it. So did the publisher. So I then got a book which I loved creating and loved the concept of, because they were so similar. So personal work is just, it's so important. And it can be hard when you're a working illustrator to find time to do that. But I think when you do, it just leads to all sorts of wonderful things.
Do you want to be known for your binge watching,
right,
or your vacuuming,
I'm definitely
or
not
your
known
illustration?
for my vacuuming, so yeah.
Yeah, you need to. Oh, that's so wonderful. Does anybody have any questions? Coco Studio, our class questioner. If the artist is political at times, is that a turnoff? No, I think it's really important. I think artists' voices have always traditionally in every culture been a place where progressive change happens, illuminating. You think of Martin Luther King, who talked about reality but uplifted. If you can uplift, I think that is welcome. It is important, and if you can do it in your own way and whatever causes and things you're passionate about,
I think
is really key. So
in difficult
I think it's
political
important.
times, it's really important for the artists to voice how they feel, because I always feel like it's like the antidote, the antidote to all the terrible things going on in the world is our art and our voice.
Now, that said, I'm not looking to be bummed out. I'm not looking. If I want to be bummed out, I the New York Times, the Globe, MSNBC, NPR. I do all that. The art, I want to see a voice that uplifts and that shines the way. Humor too is also good, but not just bitching. Bitching is not
anyone.
High road. Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high. Just stay with that. That's what I've done in my 50 years in business. 45 years. Don't make me. I thought there wouldn't be math.
There's a math
they say it?
own.
I was told there'd be no math. This is wonderful. Any final tips or
I saw one little
or...
question about finding your style, and I think it is just keep doing the work. And I think the more you do art, the more it will become obvious to you what your style is, which is basically made up of the decisions you make. Like, how do you draw your characters? What is your shape language? What colors do you choose? How much detail do you put in? All these things. It will all become more and more obvious the more you do it. And I think the other good thing to pay attention to is when you see someone else's piece of art that really sparks something for you, then okay, what is it in that is giving you that energy or that fire, and how can you bring that in your own way into your art without
copying? Of course. Right. Because no agent or publisher wants a copy. They want a unique brand. Oh, that's wonderful advice. It's so true. It's so true. It's it's a metaphor for life, really. Right. In the clothing we choose, and in the friends we choose, and where we live, and how we choose to go through life. They're all discernments that we make over the years, and that becomes who we are in our life. And same with our art, what we draw. And I always say, show the kind of work that you want to get. Show the work you want to get, because nobody is going to know that you can draw XYZ and XYZ style unless you show it. You want that cool job? Show that cool work. You want that deep, moody
And
work,
conversely,
show
if
the
you're
deep,
doing
moody work.
something just
You
because
want
you
the
think
bright,
you should be doing it, because you think that's something that
mm,
should be in a
mm.
portfolio, guaranteed that's the work you're going to get, which, you might not love if you're doing it because you think it
or
should be part of your portfolio.
or you're not,
Right. Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
not going to have that
Yeah.
magic because you did it because you should. It doesn't mean, you can say, oh, it would be really good if I showed characters and poses. But then you find your way. When I was an illustrator, I always pretended that the assignment I got was my idea. Like, I
Yeah.
want to draw blah blah today. And then what I was doing is making it an external
Mm.
request to internal, to what about it,
Yeah.
how do I connect with it? And the more you
Yeah.
connect with your own
And
art,
the
the
other thing
better.
I've done is sort
So,
of
okay.
the inverse of that. Like if I've started something and it gets really hard, if it's just a personal piece, it gets really hard, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to. This is too difficult. I don't want to do this anymore. Then I'll sort of think, okay, what if this was an assignment and I had to figure my way through it, and then
Yeah.
it sometimes ends up being a bit of problem solving, and you can learn so much about the way you approach an assignment or a commission that way. So sometimes you just need to force yourself into things too.
Hmm. That's wonderful. It's true. Yeah.
It's
Just got
been
to do
a
it.
pleasure.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Kim. This was such
great
a
talking to you.
pleasure. I'm so happy
Oh,
everybody
hi
got to.
Zoe.
Oh,
We
Zoe.
were just saying
Zoe
goodbye.
Tucker, my co-teacher for Kid Book, is here. Oh, Zoe, we're just about to finish. Well, there's the replay, I suppose. We talked all about picture books and Kim's new book called Mummy. My
Yeah.
Mummy is a Unicorn. And it was pretty wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We will be back again with our other artists as well over the weeks and months.
Thank
And
you so
thanks again
much.
for being here.
Thanks everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks. Bye.